You got to make the morning last. Hello, everyone. Well, it is the beginning, I guess. It's Monday, so I don't know if Monday is the beginning or if Sunday is, or how you may look at it. But hello, everyone. Good to see you. Hello, Warrior Queen. How are you doing? And Sherry and Brian and Jill and Al, good to see everyone. Lady Gray, Raven, good to see you. Greetings and salutations. Michaelis, good to see you. Ronald. So we continue on I think, the meaningful part of this journey. I just want to say thank you to all of you who have sent me emails. Many of you have said it in the chat room as well. The encouragement, the kind words, and the enthusiasm of, number one, the format and the subject matter. Magic, it's amazing today how we view magic. We're supposedly these advanced beings, right? 21st century, and we're going to the moon again, Mars. We're cracking the human genome. All this that we're supposedly that equates to our brilliance, our intelligence. But yet, even among sophisticated circles, and I mean, learned circles, those in academia, for instance. But this also carries over into the other cult besides religion, which is corporations. Corporation is a cult within itself. But you mentioned magic. You know what? Everyone wants to get to the other side, and then they'll say, do you think he actually believes that? Do you think he actually practices that? Yeah. Then you get someone who says, well, maybe he's a Satanist or maybe he's a Luciferian. That's where the ignorance is. And the ignorance, by the way, has been well planted. It's been by purpose. Many of you who may have not watched yesterday's program with Jeff Doherty, not your normal Sunday. Listen, folks, this book here, it goes hand in hand with what we're studying, the demonology of King James. So let me just invoke a little magic here. So I cast a spell in which we would use the word invocation upon each of you, that favor of all kinds abide and dwell with you, and that prosperity, that there be nothing lacking, and complete restoration be brought back to you, nothing missing, nothing broken, be in your life. That's a spell. It happens to be, I think, the only kind of magic that should ever be practiced. The magic of invoking favor, good fortune on others. Any other type that gets into hate, that divides the races, that divides individuals, that's the darkest kind. So I got some things on the list that I want to get out. So I got an email from a person in our community. I think it's, is it Tommy? I think this is correct. I'm sorry. Consciously aware. Now that's just funny. You see what happens? I mean, let me digress here a second. Isn't it amazing how you can get people that, try to, give you a thumbs down, let's just say, and you just speak favor into their life, hey, I just hope everything goes good for you. If there's anything lacking in your life, I just want to speak over you that that lack be obliterated and overabundance be replaced. You know what? It's like, all right, so what do we do now? I mean, the guy is actually, he's actually, wow, he seems to be in our camp. So anyway, allow me to get into a little more serious topic here. So we have one in our community that, well, I can understand her hurt. And I don't have a problem showing you the email that she sent out to me. It says, "Dear Wayne, I've been following you and watching your videos for a long time. Thank you." And I think that's correct. I think it's Tommy. Is that right? I think that's how it's pronounced. Big fan of Ruth, Kindred Spirit Terra. We're going to have Ruth back on. And she's writing this to all of us. Her story is this. She had 4 coyotes in her care. 2 of them that she's named, Sandy and Luna, for 13 years. And this is, again, you see what happens, because you see here in Colorado, we're, you can see it on the walk paths, the bike paths, coyotes. And I have them around my house. And, most people think these creatures to be not safe. But here again, closed-mindedness is a curse. It's like Alzheimer's of your cognitive spiritual development. Boom, man, you just stop. Anyway, I digress. She was properly licensed with both the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and Cook County Animal Control. All right. They've been out here, as you can see, seen my licensing and left. Then on April 24th of this year at 7 a.m., she had a surprise raid, and they took her coyotes brutally and ruthlessly. And we're going to see this here in a second. She's not exaggerating. And without regard to any empathy or suffering. Assholes typically don't have any empathy. I'm just telling you, Tommy, it's just the way it is. But anyway, they scared them to death, I have no doubt of that, by chasing them around their pens and flipping over their house, their hiding spaces. They were cornered, and they then shot them with tranquilizer darts and dragged on a chokehold poles. Humans, ain't we just something? And you're going to find out that this guy is a real asshole. Yeah, I'm calling you, if you ever watch this, you're an asshole. But, you'll never come on and be man enough because you don't have the balls to do it. Oh, excuse me. This is live. I digress. The previous was commentary of Mr. Steiger, which, yeah. Anyway, this is not funny. They literally took her pets away. Now, this is what's really odd. So she is obviously a citizen that wants to comply with all the laws, the regulations. She said she took a video, and we're going to see it. There was no warning, no friendly knock on my door prior to this asking me what type of license I held. Instead, they showed up on a surprise raid with a warrant to search my house and yard. The first thing I said is, I have a license. Let me get it. The officer told me they were taking all of my paperwork too. You see, that's what we call tyranny, because, the bureaucrats, they don't want to be held responsible, and particularly if you got evidence. So they're going to take her paperwork, and they were taking my coyotes. Now today, they told me I needed some state permit that they have never told me I needed before. Isn't that wonderful? Of course, I wanted to purchase the permit, but they wouldn't let me. They said they were taking our coyotes now. Sadly, this was the work of one overzealous DNR officer who happens to live in my neighborhood. Oh, I believe has a personal vendetta. Yeah, probably so. Or thought he would make some kind of name for himself. Well, you know, when you're facing a dead-end job, you'll do anything to try to get a little promotion. Sadly, it sounds like you were a victim of his sick career advancement choices. It was ridiculous. He told me he interviewed my neighbors, and they were all quite fond of the fact I had coyotes. And they all said I take very good care of them. He had a stack of photos from Facebook of my coyotes. You see, folks, you see how you can be blackmailed, how you can be harassed, how you can be abused by bureaucrats. They're going into social media. That's illegal. Oh, well, he'll say, no, it was on the public domain. Not if you're going after for other reasons than what the law specifically states. Obviously, there seems to be a personal motive behind this individual. But he told me not to look at his evidence. Hey, buddy, why don't you go move your sorry ass to China? Because here we have due process. You are not above the law, you see. But hey, if you live, I'm sorry that you live in Cook County. I mean, don't need to say enough about that. I've helped the community over the years, donating freezer meat, deer scraps, etc. I've also tried to educate the public about coyotes' value in our ecosystem, and they do provide a value to the ecosystem. And also the fact that I believe coyotes should not be kept as pets in a household. Our situation here was a rescue of all 4 coyote pups, it looks like, that were abandoned as pups and brought to me by people that found them. I had letters where they came from, but the DNR took everything and told me I would get copies of the originals the next day. That's illegal. Sister, I know you got an attorney. He probably knows this as well, but this individual whose cranium is so far up his rectum that the fecal matter has now replaced the gray matter is the problem here. Boy, I may not be helping your cause. I don't know. Any case, folks, so not a cool situation at all, but so she did have videos, and I think we should take a look at it. So this is what she's talking about. Here we go. Look at that. Aren't you so proud there? Such, you know, he's obviously very qualified for his position. Now remember, she's raised these since pups. I mean, that is the healthiest coyote I have ever seen, folks. Look at this. Aren't you just proud there, Mr. Small Man? Yeah, look at you. You're so proud. There we go. Yeah, I'm sorry. This gets me riled up when I see this kind of abuse by bureaucrats who've got their proverbial heads. And by the way, she's also, allow me to get back to where I'm at. Here we go. So let's go over here. There's also a story. She's gotten out on the press. So suburban woman demands state return seized coyotes. This is the state, by the way, that if you play the lottery and win, you don't get the money. Why? Because the state's broke. And there's only been one political party that's been in charge. So, yeah. And as well, here is another video. Look at that. The dog, I mean, the coyote is in stark terror. Look at this. Someone ought to drag his sorry ass around on his neck on a neck choke. You know what he would be doing? He'd be crying and screaming like a little girl. Look at this. Cook County, man, you're doing the service of the people here. Ay, 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 ay. I'm sorry, folks. This is just not cool. So, Tommy, I hope maybe I didn't hurt your cause too much. I really, again, I hope I did something, send her warm wishes. I don't know what else we can do, but, I think I think that there are good people that work within the bureaucracy that are so often shadowed by the asinine actions of a few. And if Cook County wants to come on here, I'll let them have a full mic. I'll bring Tommy on here and let's see who's lying here. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be reading these things, folks. When I'm, anyway, so I continue. All right. I hope that gets resolved. Let's get back to what we're here learning, because I think that this may help in some way to help educate. It bothers me when I see such cruelty, when I see humans that inflict. That tells me that that's an individual that has no empathy, and I can only imagine what their personal life must be like, particularly when they know that they're doing it, maybe not outside the law, but for reasons that would closely be breaking the law. Anyway, all right, let's just clear our heads here for a minute. Give me just 1 second. All right, let's move along, and let's not allow those who do this. People, folks, are cruel. It's often bothered me when I start to think about it, because remember, I come out of Christianity. Oh man, I was buried in it, and that story's been told enough. But it's always amazing to me, those who proclaim such love, how they show such hatred towards their fellow man, animals. If you're cruel to animals, there is no such thing as hell, but I have a sense that you're going to have a lot of fun on the other side. Why is it that religion wants death? You think about it. You can go on YouTube. I've had people on here that I was associated once with. They're all focused in on the end of the world, death. Most of them are sickly, and somehow they're almost cheering it on, like, yeah, let this happen. And that's the darkest kind of magic there is. When you intent, by will of thought, invoke harm on our species by your religious bigotries, that's black magic, the worst kind. It's also one of the most powerful kinds, and thus why we see today the problems where we have with even the subject of witchcraft. King James, let's talk about this dude a little bit. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I really want to get into a little bit more. Here is a fact that if I had known this 3 decades ago, probably would have altered my life right there. The fact that the king never used a name for the Christ. Not one. No Jesus, no Yeshua, no whoever. Never. He was a sick dude, man. From his birth, his childhood, he was lame, not well learned. cowardly is what people said. Mostly he was cowardly. He would sell you out in a second. They said that he was one of the best deceivers. Tell you one thing, shake your hand, and then as you walked out, stab you in the back, lying to your face. They said he mastered in deception. He, for many years, bordered, where he was playing both the Protestant, because remember, the Protestant movement was still in its infancy. Martin Luther had only made the Declaration less than 100 years ago. And the Vatican, Rome, was still the most powerful government in the world. And so James, being the little prick that he was, and in fact, prick is going to come a lot more into this, as I said yesterday, played both sides. There was a time when he was considering converting to Catholicism. Now, that would have absolutely enraged some of his countrymen, and he later decided to focus in on Protestant. He always had a fear of the dark. He always saw bad, not good. His mother was very worried about him. She knew that, wasn't the brightest of lads, and was kind of off a little bit. So anyway, James considered, once he made the conversion to Protestant, all Catholics were heretics. Now, it's really odd. Remember, there was no Bible. No. None. It was just the Latin Vulgate. Now, the Gutenheim printed Bible, that was in German, highly with lots of mistakes. I mean, other than the fact that it showed the printing press, wasn't all that accurate. So there was no Bible. And he made it. He studied the occult. That's probably the one thing he did study, but he studied it with a slanted eye. If not for the event of Anne, who was his wife, soon-to-be wife, he probably may have swayed over to paganism. Probably would have been a closet paganism, as he was a closet homosexual. But he had the superstitions. He thought people in his own court were witches, magicians, warlocks. So before he assumed the throne from Elizabeth, and he hated Elizabeth. Elizabeth, Queen first, she was very much into the occultism. She was, for all intent and purpose, a pagan. And John Dee was one of her subjects, in which she had great fondness for John Dee. And so when Anne from Denmark, that was going to be his wife, how these things worked back then, she sailed with a small armada, and they encountered a storm. And her ship, the best thing I could say is that it was like throwing a shoe off of a horse. When a horse throws a shoe, you can't ride it anymore. In her case, the plank on the ship sprung. And needless to say, that it's not a good thing when you're on a boat in the 1600s, that the plank bust off. Guess what? So anyway, she was never really in any danger. They just had to postpone the trip. And then when James left and found her and they were on their way back, there was another storm. So while they were waiting to get back to Scotland, the captain of James's ship, to pass the time, would fill him with these stories of witches, fairies, all sorts of this nonsense. And the king became convinced that witches had put a spell on him and his wife to try to kill them. And this later influenced James on everything. So now you get the background of how this guy who wrote, or how should we say, put together what is now probably the #1 black magic book out there, the Holy Bible. Oh, yeah, I know people are going to say, I can just see the thumbs down coming on that. But you have to look at this objectively. And we're doing that. So, oddly enough, the one book in James and all of his study that he despised more than any other, and let me just tell you about Agrippa's book, and that was, of course, the philosophy of natural science and the occult. That book that Agrippa wrote came out right before the printing of what now today is the modern day King James Bible. Odd, is it not? It was like there was something trying to balance this out. And James studied this book that we're studying. He studied it intently. In the discourse on the demonology of his 3 books that he wrote, and along with his treatise in the witch trials, he set the narrative as 2 friends meeting in a pub and exchanging conversation. One was going to prove that witchcraft was of Satan and the devil, and the other one was a skeptic and said, well, prove it to me. And that's the discourse you have. And of course, I thank Tyson for his work in cleaning up the old Scottish English, because none of us would have understood it. All right, so let's get right into where we are at today. How many of you have gotten your list together? I want to share, Peter did this. Peter's a moderator. Peter, identify yourself. I thought this was pretty cool. Good work. I don't know if you want to share this, Peter, or not, but if any of you are struggling with how to figure this thing out, this is perfect. Now, remember, this is the negative. There will be a side of the positive. Speaking of the positive, by the way, allow me to go right over here. When we look at the positive attributes, the negative had 5 pages. The positive has 3. I did a word-by-word study, about 10 years ago, on the book of Proverbs. And I wrote every trait of a fool and every trait of a wise person. The fools, I think it was 10 plus pages when you're writing out each verse, forgetting the chapters, but looking at it as it was originally written. The characteristics of the fool are much more numerous than those of a wise person. And the positive is, again, much more succinct. I hope all of you get this list, because you need to have balance. Yes, it's good. The reason why we're doing the exercise, as Franz will teach us here some more, is to be able to adequately defend yourself, to protect yourself. Now, I've been told, people who have written me, and I kind of sense this, but, they say, well, the essence of what Lilith is, protect some of us. Well, happen to believe that Lilith does exist in some way. So, all right. Now, I put together a little presentation here, as I normally do. Give me 1 second, please. And here we go. So, thought for the day, folks. There will be a test on this. So, I'm meditating and just looking out, and I realized that since I cannot identify my species' origins, nor can I identify what I am, I can say I'm sentient. I can say that I'm aware, but actually I have no idea where my thoughts originate from, which only then can conclude we are in the thought of another's thought, not our own. None of us thought of what we're immersed into. None of us. Now, if you disagree with this, then explain to me how you created all of this. All right, so you should be up on speed on this. But if you're not, we're going to continue, because if you're going to learn to master your own magic, you have to know the rules, you have to know the laws, you have to know what principles are in play. The four elements: air, water, fire, earth. Everything is predicated in this realm, in this physical temporal realm, and it appears to a great extent into the spiritual realm of this temporal realm. I've battled with this and trying to disseminate. Well, all right, so there's a physical realm that we're all aware of, but we've often disassociate the spiritual realm separate from the physical realm. I don't think that that is accurate. Otherwise, there would be no need for any haunting. There would be no need for any spirit presence to be in this realm. So it clearly indicates that maybe in the next life that we call the spiritual realm, there are degrees of low ranking, high ranking. 4 compounds: stones, metals, plants, animals. They each relate to the 4 elements. Stones are as equal to earth, metals are equal to water, plants are equal to air, animals are equal to fire. Agrippa will explain this in our lesson today. Soul. The soul is divided up into 4 categories, but of the 4, there is 5. Remember that little lesson we learned last week? Here is how this works. Your soul, my soul, according to the masters, is this: understanding is equated to fire. Reason is equated to air. Imagination is equated to water. The 5 senses are equated to earth. That leads the 5 senses. The 5 senses are 5 that are 4 that are related to the elements, the 4 elements. Sight is equated to fire. Hearing is equated to air. You can see how that works. Smell and taste is combined and are equated to water, whereas touch is equated to earth. You think about it. You can't touch anything unless it's of the earth and all of its elements. Even with the wind, you can feel the wind, but it's still the earth that's causing it. Feelings. Feelings have a direct connection to the magic of the 4 elements of the 4 compounds. Earth signifies a slow, firm motion. Water signifies fearfulness and sluggish remissness in work. I found it interesting how Agrippa in their thoughts, all of us have to work. You will labor until the day you die. Air signifies cheerfulness and an amiable disposition. That's cool. Fire signifies a fierce, quick, angry disposition. Now, if you're an initiate as I am into Hermetics, this will help you advance in Hermetics beyond what you can do. This is how you transmutate. This is how you do it. When you understand the emotion and then how it ties into the elements, becomes very easy. So I hope that helped in giving you an idea of how the four elements come into play. And as we get in today's lesson, we're going to find what Agrippa, and give me 1 second as I pull it up, is all about. This is wonderful. I just got to tell you, folks, it's just the coolest thing. I've read it a number of times, and each time it's just like, this is far out. All right, so remember, this is the book King James himself despised. He thought that this thing should have been burnt, never see the light of day of any human being. Well, James, one thing you did by doing that simply told the rest of us, I think we should check this out. So let's continue to check it out. Have a sip of tea, and here we go. Of chapter 7, of the kinds of compounds, what relation they stand in to the elements, and what relation there is between the elements themselves and the soul, senses, and dispositions of men. Next, after the four simple elements, follow the four kinds of perfect bodies compounded in them, and they are stones, metals, plants, and animals. And although all through unto the generations of each of these are the elements meet together in the composition, yet every one of them follows and resembles one of the elements which is most predominant. For all stones are earthy, for they are naturally heavy and descend, and so hardened with dryness that they cannot be melted. But metals are waterish and may be melted, which naturalists confessed and chemists find to be true, that they are generated of a viscous water or waterish argent vive. I love that, vive. Plants have such an affinity with the air that unless they be abroad in the open air, they do neither bud nor increase. So also the animals have in their nature a most fierce force, and also spring from the celestial source. And fire is so natural to them that being extinguished, they presently die. And again, every one of these kinds is distinguished within itself by reasons of degree of the elements. For amongst the stones, they especially are called earthy, that are dark and more heavy. And those waterish, which are transparent and are compacted of water, as crystals, beryl, and pearls in the shells of fishes. And they are called airy, which swim upon the water, and are spongious, as the stones of a sponge, the pumice stone, and the stone of Suphus. And they are called fiery, out of which fire is extracted, or which all produce a fire, as thunderbolts, firestones, and the stones of asbestos. Also amongst metals, lead and silver are earthy. Quicksilver is waterish, copper and tin are airy, and gold and iron are fiery. In plants also, the roots resemble the earth by reason of their thickness, and the leaves water because of their juice. Flowers, the air, because of their subtlety, and the seeds, the fire, by reason of their multiplying spirit. This was one I thought was really odd when I saw this. So with plants, and I thought, well, what is he talking about, multiplying spirits? Well, I think in pollination, wouldn't that kind of make sense to you? And I went, I mean, he's talking about the seeds by fire by reason of their multiplying spirit. And I'm going, all right, so are we talking here? I mean, it's like we have forest fires out here. And every time a fire goes through in the mountains somewhere, the pine cones will, they have to be literally burnt, will release a new seedling. A lot of alchemy in here. Besides, they are called some hot, some cold, some moist, some dry, borrowing their names from the qualities of the elements. Amongst animals also, some are in comparison of others earthly, and dwell in the bowels of the earth, as worms and moles, and many other small creeping vermin. I got some moles in my yard. Others are watery, as fishes. Others are airy, which cannot live out of the air. Others also are fiery, living in the fire, as salamanders and crickets, such as are of the fiery heat, as pigeons, ostriches, lions, and such as the wise men call beasts breathing fire. Besides, in animals, the bones resemble the earth, flesh of the air, the vital spirit the fire, and the humors the water. And these humors are partake of the elements. For yellow color is instead of fire, blood instead of air, phlegm instead of water, and black color or melancholy instead of earth. Check this out, folks. And lastly, in the soul itself, according to Austin, the understanding resembles fire, reason, the air, imagination, water, and the senses, the earth. And these senses also are divided amongst themselves by reason of the elements. For the sight is fiery, neither can it perceive without fire and light. And hearing is airy, for a sound is made by the striking of the air. The smell and taste resemble the water, without the moisture of which there is neither smell nor taste. That's something to think about. And lastly, the feeling is wholly earthy and takes gross bodies for its objects. The actions also and the operations of man are governed by the elements. The earth signifies a slow and firm motion. The water signifies fearfulness and sluggishness and remissiveness in work. Air signifies cheerfulness and an amiable disposition. But fire, a fierce, quick, and angry disposition. The elements, therefore, are the first of all things, and all things are of and according to them, and they are in all things, and diffuse their virtues through all things. Chapter 8, how the elements are in the heavens, in stars, in devils, in angels, and lastly, in God himself. I just want to put a commentary here. As those of you who have the book, and if you want it, again, just email me, I'll get it to you. You're probably finding out that Agrippa was, I would call him, in contemporary times, a most religious, devout man. Not in the sense of Christianity, he saw through that, but yet, in his day and in his culture of society, even though you were considered to be a master magician, in which even Agrippa said, well, listen, I'm just putting this down. I'm not saying that, it's all of all, but it's works. So I always found this just odd. All right. It is the unanimous consent of all Platonists that, as in the original and exemplary world, all things are in all. First rule of Hermetics. So also in this corporeal world, all things are in all. So also the elements are not only in these inferior bodies, but also in the heavens, in stars, in devils, in angels, and lastly, in God, the maker and original example of all things. Now, in these inferior bodies, the elements are accompanied with much gross matter. Yeah. But in heavens, the elements are with their natures and virtues. After a celestial in more excellent manner than in the sublunary things, for the firmness of the celestial earth is there without the grossness of water, and the agility of the air without running over its bounds, the heat of fire without burning, only shining and giving life to all things by its heat. Amongst the stars also, some are fiery, as Mars and Sol, airy, as Jupiter and Venus, watery, as Saturn and Mercury, and earthy, such as the inhabitants of the eighth orb and the moon. By the way, boy, did I go on a side trip on the eighth orb and the whole structure of that. In essence, I'll just tell you what it is. We'll read it in the footnotes, but in essence, the thought is that we are immersed in an orb of an orb of an orb, each with its complexity, each with its uniquenesses. And I'll be showing some of the pictures that go along with this. Many of you probably recognize the one that shows the different degrees. And the moon, with which notwithstanding by many is accounted watery. So I didn't know that the moon was under the heading of watered. I'm learning. Seeing as if it were earth, it attracts to itself the celestial waters. And isn't it odd that they've discovered water on the moon, by the way, with which, being embittered, it does, by reason of its nearness to us, pour out and communicate to us. You know, I miss Patrick. Patrick, thinking of you, my friend. And Angie, you as well. You know, so much affirmation on the grounds that were being pioneered. There are also amongst the signs some fiery, some earthy, some airy, some watery. The elements rule them also in the heavens, distributing to them these four threefold considerations of every element, the beginning, middle, and end. So, Aries possesses the beginning of fire, Leo, the progress and increase, Sagittarius, the end, Taurus, the beginning of the earth, Virgo, the progress, Capricorn, the end, Gemini, the beginning of the air, Libra, the process, and Aquarius, the end, Libra, excuse me. Cancer, the beginning of water, Scorpio, the middle, and Pisces, the end. Of the mixtions thereof, of these planets and signs, together with the elements, are all bodies made. Moreover, devils also are upon this account distinguished the one from the other, so that some are called fiery, some earthy, some airy, and some watery. Hence also those four infernal rivers of the I think that's the Coyotes, the Styx, and the Archeron. Also in the Gospels, we read of hellfire, the eternal fire, into which the cursed shall be commanded to go. In the Revelation, we read of a lake of fire, and Isaiah speaks of the damned, that the Lord will smite them with corrupt air. And in Job, they shall skip from the waters of the snow to the extremity of heat. And in the same we read that the earth is dark and covered with the darkness of death and miserable darkness. I highlighted this because this one really stood out to me. You know, I contend that we're not in the life realm. I know, you know, people say, well, born into life and then we die out of life. I think it's backwards. Because this, in my meditation, everything consumes itself in this realm. Decay is the natural state of everything in this realm. Earth is dark and covered with the darkness of death and a miserable darkness. The grim reaper, the spirit of death, is always denoted by a black figure, shadowy figure. I don't know. Moreover, also, these elements are placed in the angels in heaven and the blessed intelligences. There's another key word in there, the blessed intelligences. Again, is Agrippa telling us? I think we're probably going to learn. So there's clearly many different species in this realm. There is in them a stability of their essence, which is an earthly virtue, in which is the steadfast seat of God. Also, their mercy and piety is a watery cleansing virtue. Hence, by the psalmist, they are called waters, where he, speaking of the heavens, says, "Who rules the waters that are higher than the heavens?" You know who else told us this? Lilith in the Liber. Also, in them, their subtle breath is air, and their love is shining fire. Hence, they are called in Scripture the wings of the wind. And in another place, the psalmist speaks of them, who makes angels his spirits and his ministers, a flaming fire. That's actually in the book of Hebrews, in the book of Psalms. Also, according to orders of angels, some are fiery as the Sephrim, the authorities and powers, such earthy as the cherubim, watery as the thrones, and archangels, airy as the dominions and principalities. Where did we hear this before? This is Ephesians 6:12. I often wonder where Paul got this stuff. Do we not also read of the original maker of all things, that the earth shall be opened and bring forth a Savior? Is it not spoken of the same, that he shall be a fountain of living water, cleansing and regenerating? Is it not the same Spirit breathing the breath of life, and the same, according to Moses and Paul's testimony, a consuming fire? That elements, therefore, are to be found everywhere, and in all things after their manner. No man can deny. First, in these inferior bodies, succulent and gross, and in celestials, more pure and clear, but in supercelestial living, and in all respects blessed. Elements, therefore, in the exemplary world are ideas of things to be produced. In intelligences are distributed powerful, in intelligences are distributed powers. In heavens are virtues, and inferior bodies gross forms. I find this remarkable. So much that was so viled against this man, he clearly acknowledges much of the very foundation of Christianity in Judaism today. It's strange. Of the virtues of things natural, depending immediately upon elements. Of the natural virtues of things, some are elementary, as to heat, to cool, to moisten, to dry, and they are called operations, or first qualities. And the second act, for these qualities only do wholly change the whole substance, which none of the other qualities can do. This is key right here, folks. If you're keeping notes, and this will be in a future slide, he's telling us how things change, how you can begin to manifest your thought and intent and begin to have it manifested into material substance. And some are in things compounded of elements, and these are more than first qualities. And such are those that are maturating, digesting, resolving, mollifying, hardening, restraining, abstaining, coordinating, corroding, burning, opening, evaporating, strengthening, mitigating, conglomerating, obstructing, expelling, retaining, attracting, repercussing, stupefying, bestowing, lubrifying, and many more. I'm going to have to write these out for all of us. Maturing, digesting, resolving, mollifying, there's a word that you don't read, hardening, restringing, abstringing, corroding, burning, opening, evaporating, strengthening. This is what we would call alchemy. It's all right there. Elemental qualities do many things in a mixed body, which they cannot do in the elements themselves. And these operations are called secondary qualities because they follow the nature and proportion of the mixture of the first virtues, as largely it is treated of in physic books, science, as maturation, which is the operation of natural heat according to a certain proportion in the substance of the matter. So, induration is the operation of cold. So also is congelation, and so of the rest. And these operations sometimes act upon a certain member as such, which provoke water, milk, the flow, and they are called third qualities, which follow the second as the second do the first. According, therefore, to these first, second, and third qualities, many diseases are both cured and caused. Yeah, I'll dissect this out for us. This is revealing. Many things also there are artificially made, which men much wonder at, as is fire, which burns, water, which they call the Greek fire, and which Aristotle teaches many compositions in his particular treatise of this subject. In like manner, there is made a fire that is extinguished with oil and is kindled with cold water, when it is sprinkled upon it, and a fire which is kindled either with rain, wind, or sun, and there is made a fire which is called burning water, the confection whereof is well known, and it consumes nothing but itself. And also there are made fires that cannot be quenched, and incombustible oils and perpetual lamps, which can be extinguished neither with wind nor water nor any other way, which seems utterly incredible. But that there had been such a famous lamp, which once did shine in the temple of Venus, in which the stones of asbestos did burn, which being once fired can never be extinguished. Also, on the contrary, wood or any other combustible matter may be so ordered that it can receive no harm from the fire. And there are made certain confections, which with the hands being anointed, we may carry red-hot irons in them, or put them into melted metal, or go with our whole bodies, being first anointed therewith, into the fire without any manner of harm. And such like these things as these may be done. There is also a kind of flax, which Pliny calls asbestum. The Greeks call it asbestum, which is not consumed by fire, of which Ananeclus saith that a tree compassed about with it may be cut down with insensible blows that cannot be heard. All right, we'll stop there. We'll get into chapter 10 tomorrow of the occult virtues of things. Wow. For those who have stayed, is this far out? I mean, seriously. Powerful magic here, folks. I mean, this is just learning the elements, learning how to mix them, we haven't even gotten into the incantations. Right now, it's just understanding how spells, incantations work. I mean, it's the same thing virtually we see through all organized religion. All of these elements are still all there. They're replicated. They cannot be without. It's impossible. The occult is nothing more than the sacred knowledge. And we're learning. Thanks, Franny. Hope you're having fun in Atlanta. Used to live there, as we know. But anyway, folks, to me, this is just, I read earlier, someone wrote that there are probably more armchair magicians, occultists, than there are actually those who practice. And I happen to agree with you. No, most people won't do the work. I mean, to list out every freaking fault you have, I don't know too many people that will do that. Oh, yeah, they can learn the words. They can understand how the spells, how magic works. But many of them fail miserably at their magic. In fact, I can say it's probably failed magic because they really don't know what they're doing and they're not qualified. Someone said that, I know who the person is, that they were initiated. I think we all have our own forms of initiation, but if it be by a group or otherwise, then there is qualifications. Yep, there we go. Lots of synergy. Brad, no, we're going, Agrippa has a whole section on mirror scouring. So we're going to finish this book. It's a long one, but I don't care. The way I look at it, like here, I know there's enough of you that think like I do. We're tired of the dogmas, the mantras, the mind coitus that goes on. And I'd like to have found a place where I could get this on audible.com. They don't do it. So we're going to read it out with us, and we're going to learn along the way. We're going to correlate it with Franz's book, Initiation into Hermetics. And, it is an initiation. It's the only way you can say it. So anyway, let's see. I got things here I need to turn off. There we go. All right, folks. Well, thank you for joining me. It's a beautiful day out there. Enjoy it wherever you are. Practice your own magic. Learn to become masterful at it. Let's learn together the basic elements and how we can begin. It's this is algebra. I mean, I am seeing the formula laid out I can see it in my head. A equals, you have to have A or C, which would be representing of the element, and you start doing your equation out. And so when we start invoking prosperity, healing, it's like Agrippa said, just what we went through right there is a lot of the causes for many diseases. But within it, there's also the cures as well. And so we'll go along with that. All right, folks, well, be good. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all of your support. I appreciate it. I told you that when we get finished with this, it's one thing, we will be changed. And we'll love people along the way. And those who support us, we will just include them. And those who oppose us, well, we'll include them also. The great thing about magic is that it's non-discriminatory. It's like I asked Jeff yesterday. I said, what is your belief in how man came about? Do you think that there was a God that just did this and all of a sudden there was a body there that was fully conscious, knew how to talk, knew how to reason, understood the whole complexity of communication and intent and everything else? And if you believe that, then please tell me at what timeline of the homogeneous timeline of our species did that happen? I put one guy, I'll just tell you, he thought he was going to be a wise guy. And I put that question to him, and he never came back. And probably it's one of them that gave the thumb down. But yeah, so come on, folks. If you're going to say you know our origins, then please explain to the rest of us what and when did this fall happen? Or is it that we came from apes? Yes. Primates. Man-ape. Ape-man. Oh, people don't want to hear that shit. Oh, no, 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 no. Don't give me that. I ain't no monkey. I've had people write me more than that. I'm no monkey. I didn't say you were. We're talking. This is a classroom. Is this how you acted when you were in a classroom? No wonder you got the grades you did. Shut up and you might learn something. All right, Jeff, I just sparkled that. All right, folks, be good. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.